I was sent to a forgotten outpost in Vietnam. The dead were still fighting there. A fictional Vietnam War horror story. Part 1. The place that wasn't on the map. There are things I remember about Vietnam with perfect clarity. The smell of wet canvas, red mud drying on my boots, the metallic taste of water from an army canteen, the sound of a helicopter fading over a tree line, and the strange emptiness that followed. Other memories have softened with age. Faces, dates, names. But I remember Outpost 17. I remember every rule. And after 55 years, I still wake at 1:13 in the morning whenever it rains. My name is Daniel Carter. In 1971, I was 23 years old. An Army radio operator assigned to a small communications detachment in Central Vietnam. I wasn't a hero. I wasn't looking for a fight. Most days my job consisted of carrying a radio that felt heavier every mile and trying to keep frightened men connected to other frightened men. On September 8th, a captain called me into a canvas operations tent and pointed at a grease pencil mark on a map. Relay station lost contact yesterday. We need a replacement operator there until we can pull the equipment. I studied the map. There was no symbol where his finger rested. What's the station called? 17. Who's already there? Sergeant Thomas Miller. How long am I staying? 1 night, maybe 2. That should have been the first warning. Nothing in Vietnam was ever 1 night, maybe 2. A helicopter carried me west that afternoon. There were 3 men aboard. Besides the crew, 2 were dropped at a fire base. After that it was just me. The farther we flew, the less I recognized. The pilot kept checking a paper map taped beside his knee. Finally he pointed through the open door. Below us was a clearing barely large enough for the helicopter. In the center stood a concrete bunker, a short radio mast, coils of rusted wire, and the black remains of what might once have been 2 wooden buildings. The helicopter descended but never landed properly. The skids hovered above the grass. The crew chief shouted for me to jump. I did. My pack hit the ground beside me. Before I could turn around, the helicopter climbed. I remember waving. Nobody waved back. Within seconds, the aircraft was gone. That was when I saw Miller. He stood in the doorway of the bunker. Tall, thin, maybe 40. His uniform was faded, almost gray. A cigarette burned between 2 fingers. He watched the empty sky. Then he looked at me. Carter. Yes, Sergeant. You're late. I checked my watch. Pilot had trouble finding the place. Miller gave a humorless smile. Everybody does. He picked up my pack and carried it inside. The bunker had 1 main room and a smaller radio compartment. 2 cots stood against opposite walls. There were ammunition cans, water cans, a field telephone with its cable cut, and an old radio set. On one wall someone had carved 7 vertical lines into the concrete. Beside them were the words, "Follow the rules." I laughed. Miller didn't. He handed me a folded sheet of paper. Read it before dark. I opened it. 7 rules had been written in block letters. Rule 1. After sunset, never answer a voice calling your name from outside. Rule 2. If a woman cries near the south wire, extinguish every light. Do not look for her. Rule 3. At 1:13 a.m., there will be 3 knocks. Never open the door. Rule 4. If the radio receives a transmission from call sign Blackbird, do not respond. Rule 5. If you see a soldier beyond the eastern wire, look at his boots before you look at his face. If the boots point the wrong way, look down. Rule 6. If you hear helicopters between 2 o'clock and 3 a.m., stay inside. They are not coming for you. Rule 7. If Sergeant Miller returns after midnight, shoot him before he speaks. I read the final line twice. Then I looked up. Miller was lighting another cigarette. Very funny. No joke. Rule 7 says to shoot you. I can read. Why? His eyes moved toward the door. Because after midnight, whatever comes back won't be me. I waited for him to smile. He didn't. What is this place? A relay station. I mean the rules. Things happen here. What things? Miller checked his watch. Sun sets in 20 minutes. He picked up a rifle. Where are you going? Back to the pickup point. You're leaving me here? Your orders say relieve me. I thought we'd overlap. We have. For 15 minutes? He walked to the door. I followed. Sergeant, wait. He stopped without turning. One more thing, Carter. If you break a rule, don't assume you're dead. Sometimes that's what it wants. It wants you frightened enough to stop. Thinking. What wants me frightened? For several seconds he said nothing. Then he answered. The people who never left. He walked into the jungle. I watched him until the trees swallowed him. At 6:42 p.m., the sun disappeared. Part 2, the first voice. Night in the jungle wasn't quiet. That surprised people who had never been there. Darkness came with insects, frogs, birds, dripping leaves, branches moving under animals. You couldn't see. At first those sounds comforted me. They meant the world was behaving normally. I checked the radio. I logged the frequencies. I ate cold food from a can and told myself Miller had been playing an elaborate joke on the new guy. At 8:07, the jungle became silent. Not gradually. Everything stopped at once. I put down my spoon. Somewhere outside, a branch snapped. Then another. Footsteps approached from the north. I reached for my rifle. The footsteps stopped outside the bunker. A man whispered, Daniel. My stomach tightened. Almost nobody in country called me Daniel. Carter was what the army called me. The voice came again. Daniel. It sounded like my younger brother, Michael. Michael was 17 and living with our parents in Ohio. I stood. Mike. The instant the word left my mouth, I remembered Rule 1. Never answer. The voice outside stopped. Then it laughed. Not loudly. Just a small, pleased laugh. I raised my rifle. Who's there? No answer. A fingernail or something like one dragged across the metal door. Slowly. Then my brother's voice said, Now I know you can hear me. I backed away. The handle moved. Once. Twice. Then stopped. For the next 20 minutes the thing outside used voices I knew. My mother asking me to come home. My father telling me I was in trouble. A friend from basic training who had been killed months earlier. Finally it used my own voice. Daniel Carter. It whispered. Open the door. I didn't. Eventually the footsteps retreated. The jungle noises returned. I sat down and stared at the rules. I had broken the first one. At 9:26, the radio clicked. Static filled the room. Then a voice said, Outpost 17, this is Blackbird. Radio check. Rule 4. I did not touch the handset. 17, Blackbird. Do you copy? Static. Then, Carter, answer me. My hand froze. Daniel, we know you broke Rule 1. I pulled the radio power cable. The voice continued. That won't help. The radio had no power. But Blackbird kept talking. You should ask Miller what happened to the first operator. Then the speaker went dead. I stared at it for a long time. 10:14 I heard a woman crying. Part 3. The woman at the wire. The crying came from the south. It was distant at first. Soft sobbing under the rain. Then I remembered Rule 2. I extinguished the lantern. The bunker became black. I sat with my rifle across my knees. The crying moved closer. She was speaking Vietnamese. I knew only a few words and couldn't understand most of it. But one phrase repeated. Con toi, my child. Again and again. My child. The voice reached the wire, then stopped. Something touched the outside wall. A soft scrape. Then another. I wanted to look through the firing slit. I didn't. A woman's voice suddenly spoke in English. Soldier. I held my breath. Please. Silence. My baby. Something tapped the wall. Please help. Every instinct told me there might really be someone outside. War teaches you that impossible things happen to ordinary people. Civilians wander into places they shouldn't. Wounded people crawl. farther than seems possible. Part 4. The 3 knocks. At midnight, I considered leaving. I could follow Miller's trail east and reach the pickup point before morning. But the jungle outside felt worse than the bunker. So I stayed. At 1:12, I watched the second hand on my watch. At 1:13, knock, knock, knock. Exactly 3. I aimed my rifle at the door. Carter, Miller, open up. I said nothing. Carter, it's me. The door shook under his fist. Something followed me. Open the damn door. Rule 7. If Miller returns after midnight, shoot him before he speaks. Too late. He had already spoken. Carter. Then the radio behind me came alive. Carter, don't open it. Miller's voice. I turned. The radio remained unplugged. His voice crackled through the speaker. Whatever is outside isn't me. The thing at the door became silent. I looked from the radio to the entrance. Sergeant. The speaker hissed. You answered it earlier, didn't you? I swallowed. Yes. Then it can use more than voices now. What does that mean? A laugh came from outside. Miller's laugh. The radio voice whispered, don't look through the door. Naturally, I looked. Through a narrow gap beside the frame, I saw a man standing outside. Miller's uniform. Miller's face. But his smile was too wide. Then his head rotated slowly until his face was upside down. I stumbled backward. The thing outside whispered, found you. The lantern died. Something slammed against the door. Once, twice, again. The hinges screamed. I fired through the metal. The impact stopped. For several seconds there was silence. Then the radio said, you shouldn't have done that. Why? Because now they remember the shooting. The jungle exploded. Gunfire erupted outside. Machine guns. Rifle fire. Mortars. Men screaming in English and Vietnamese. The bunker shook. I dropped to the floor. But through the firing slit I saw no muzzle flashes. No soldiers. No explosions. Only dark trees in the rain. The battle was invisible. And it sounded close enough to touch. Part 5. The soldier with backward boots. At 1:47 the gunfire stopped. I smelled smoke. Not fresh smoke. Old smoke. Burned wood, burned cloth, something worse. A figure stood beyond the eastern wire. American uniform. Helmet. Rifle hanging from one hand. Rule 5. I looked at his boots. They pointed away from me. His knees bent toward me. His torso faced me. I lowered my eyes immediately. The soldier spoke. Carter. I stared at the floor. Look at me. No. I know what Miller told you. His voice changed. It became the voice of Blackbird. He lied. Then the crying woman's voice. He left us. Then my brother. Daniel. I kept looking down. The figure reached the wire. I could hear metal creaking. You want to know why the boots matter? I said nothing. Because the dead walk toward the last place they remember. The wire snapped. I heard footsteps. But they were moving backward. Closer. Closer. They stopped at the bunker wall. A shadow covered the firing slit. Then the soldier whispered, you are walking the wrong way too. At 2 o'clock, rotor blades appeared in the distance. Part 6. The helicopters. At first I felt relief. Helicopters meant Americans. Extraction. Safety. Then I saw Rule 6. Between 2 and 3, stay inside. The rotor noise grew. 1 helicopter. Then 3. Then 6. But there were no lights in the sky. The sound came from below the tree canopy. Moving through the jungle. A spotlight swept between the trunks. Another followed. I saw the silhouette of a helicopter glide between trees where no helicopter could possibly fit. Its rotors passed through branches without touching them. Inside the open door sat soldiers. Every one of them was staring at the bunker. The aircraft stopped in the clearing without landing. A crew chief leaned out. Carter, get aboard. I recognized him. He was the same crew chief who had dropped me off. Come on. I stood. Then I noticed the helicopter side. Black scorch marks. Bullet holes. Blood on the floor. The crew chief smiled. Extraction. Behind him, every soldier turned his head toward me at the same time. One had no eyes. Another had half a face. A third was holding his own helmet in his lap. His head was still inside it. I stepped away from the door. The crew chief's smile vanished. "Get on the aircraft." The helicopter rushed forward. I threw myself down. Instead of crashing into the bunker, it passed through the wall. For one freezing second, I was inside it. I smelled aviation fuel and blood. I heard men screaming. I saw jungle spinning beneath us. Then it was gone. The bunker returned. My watch read 2:19. On the wall, beneath the 7 rules, new words had appeared. The 8th rule is for tomorrow. Part 7, the journal. I searched the bunker. Under Miller's cot, I found a loose floor panel. Beneath it was a waterproof ammunition box. Inside were photographs, reports, and a notebook. The notebook belonged to Lieutenant Samuel Hayes. The first entry was dated March 1970. Outpost 17 had originally been an observation and communications position. 12 Americans had been stationed there. Nearby was a small Vietnamese hamlet. According to Hayes, both sides avoided the area after dark because local people believed the hill was a place where voices became lost. At first, the soldiers laughed. Then a radio operator received transmissions from units that didn't exist. A sentry heard his dead mother calling from the jungle. Another soldier disappeared after following a crying woman. 3 days later, he returned. He walked backward into camp. His boots faced the wrong direction. Hayes wrote, "We shot him." He kept walking. The entries became less orderly. Men saw helicopters that had been destroyed months earlier. They heard battles that hadn't happened yet. The radio began using their own voices. Then I found Miller's name. Sergeant Thomas Miller transferred to Outpost 17, April 1970. I turned pages. Miller had survived the first major incident. He created the rules. Not 7, 8. The 8th had been torn from the notebook. A final report said Outpost 17 was attacked and destroyed in June 1970. No survivors. I stopped reading. June 1970. More than a year before I arrived. Miller was listed among the dead. The bunker door creaked. I looked up. Miller stood inside. Part 8 Miller. He looked exactly as he had that afternoon. Dry uniform. Cigarette. Tired eyes. Except there was a dark bullet hole in the center of his chest. I raised my rifle. "Rule 7, he said. I fired. The bullet struck him. He didn't move. "Good," he said. "You remembered." I fired again. "Stop wasting ammunition." "What are you?" "Depends what time it is." He looked at my watch. 2:31. "We don't have long." "You died last year." "Yes." "You dropped me here." "No. I saw you." "You saw something that remembers me." I kept the rifle aimed at him. "Then why are you here?" "Because some part of me is still here." He pointed toward the journal. "You found Hayes." "What happened?" Miller sat on the empty cot. "During the fighting, people died on this hill from both sides. Americans, Vietnamese soldiers, civilians. Some were buried. Some weren't. Then the radio started receiving voices. Ghosts. Maybe. Hayes thought the hill didn't hold the dead. He thought it held their last moments. I didn't understand. Miller continued. Fear. Confusion. Orders. Screaming. Every death left something behind. The radio gave those memories a way to speak. And Blackbird. Miller's expression changed. Blackbird isn't a person. What is it? The thing that learned from all the memories. The radio clicked. "Thomas," Blackbird said. Miller looked toward it. "Don't answer." Blackbird laughed. "You always say that." Miller stood. "Carter, the rules don't protect you from ghosts. They keep Blackbird from learning enough about you to make a copy." My mouth went dry. I answered my name. "I know. What happens now?" "It knows your voice." The radio spoke in my voice. "It knows more than that." Miller closed his eyes. "At 3 o'clock the night resets." "What?" "Everything here repeats. The voices, the woman, the knocking. Helicopters. If you're inside when it resets, I had no memory of making them. Part 9, the 8th rule. Where is Rule 8? I asked. Miller nodded toward the journal. I tore it out. Why? Because Blackbird learned the rules. Then tell me. No. Why not? Because it can hear us. The radio crackled. He's right, Daniel. My own voice. Miller grabbed the radio and smashed it against the wall. The speaker continued laughing. 2:39. Miller pulled a map from the ammunition box. He pointed to a dry creek west of the bunker. There's a tunnel entrance here. 2:50, the sounds outside will stop. You have 10 minutes to reach it. Then what? Follow the tunnel until you find a steel door. And Rule 8. Miller leaned close and whispered so quietly I barely heard him. When you reach the door, someone you trust will be waiting. They will know things only that person should know. They may look perfect. They may cry. They may beg. He paused. Do not follow the living. I stared at him. What does that mean? You'll understand. The bunker shook. Outside, dozens of voices began calling my name. Miller looked toward the door. It's early. The walls filled with whispers. Daniel, Daniel, Daniel. Some voices were American. Some Vietnamese. Some male. Some female. Some children. Miller shoved the map into my hand. At 2:50, run. What about you? I've been trying to leave for a year. Come with me. A sad smile crossed his face. I already tried. At 2:49, someone knocked 3 times. 2:50, every sound stopped. Miller opened the door. Go. I ran. Part 10, the tunnel. The jungle was unnaturally still. I followed the compass west. Behind me, the bunker door remained open. Miller stood there watching. Then figures emerged around him. Dozens. Soldiers. Civilians. Some American. Some Vietnamese. Some wearing uniforms I couldn't identify in the darkness. Miller raised one hand. I kept running. The dry creek appeared. I found the tunnel entrance hidden beneath roots. I crawled inside. Behind me, the jungle screamed. Every sound from the night happened at once. Gunfire. Crying. Helicopters. My mother's voice. My brother. Miller. My own voice. I crawled faster. The tunnel descended. Eventually I could stand. Someone had dug it years before. Wooden supports lined the passage. Water dripped from the ceiling. At 2:55, I reached a fork. The map showed only one tunnel, left or right. Then I heard a voice from the left. Daniel, my father. Son. From the right came Miller. Don't listen. I remembered Rule 8. Do not follow the living. My father was alive. Miller was dead. I went right. My father's voice screamed after me. You always disappoint me. I kept moving. At another fork, I heard my brother on one side. On the other, a dead friend from basic training. I followed the dead friend. At every junction, Blackbird offered someone living. My mother, my brother, a girl I had planned to marry. The dead guided me in the opposite direction. I finally understood. Blackbird could imitate the living because it could steal memories from me. But the dead already belonged to the hill. Their voices weren't always Blackbird. Some were trying to help. At 2:58, I reached the steel door. Someone stood before it. Me. Another Daniel Carter. Same uniform. Same mud. Same frightened face. He raised both hands. Don't shoot. Aimed. Which one are you? The one who got here yesterday. My heart stopped. What? He pulled up his sleeve. 5 lines were scratched into his wrist. You made it this far last night. So did I. You're Blackbird. No. You're Blackbird. I nearly fired. Then he said something nobody else knew. When you were 9, you broke Michael's red bicycle and blamed the neighbor boy. You never told anyone. I froze. He knew everything. Because he was me. Or because Blackbird knew me. The other Carter started crying. Please. I don't want to die again. Behind him the steel door opened. Beyond it was daylight. I could see American soldiers. A helicopter. A medic waving. Come on! the other Carter shouted. We're out. Rule 8. Do not follow the living. Everyone beyond the door was alive, or appeared to be. Behind me came footsteps. Miller emerged from the darkness. Bullet hole in his chest. Close the door, he said. The other Carter screamed. He's lying. Miller approached. Close it. Daniel, the other me shouted. Look outside. We're saved. The helicopter crew waved. The medic shouted my name. Sunlight warmed my face. My entire body wanted to step through. Then I noticed something. The helicopter blades were turning. But I heard no rotor noise. The soldiers were shouting. But their mouths were half a second behind their voices. And the sun was rising in the west. I slammed the steel door. The other Carter's arm reached through. I pushed harder. He screamed in my voice. Please. Miller helped me. The door closed. Everything went black. My watch beeped. 3 a.m. Part 11. What happened at 3? For several seconds, nothing existed. No sound. No light. No sense of my own body. Then I woke on the bunker floor. Sunlight entered through the firing slit. I sat up. My head hurt. A folded paper lay beside me. 7 rules. I looked at my watch. September 9th. For one terrifying moment I remembered nothing. Then I felt pain beneath the watchband. 7 lines. Memories returned. Miller. The tunnel. The false daylight. Rule 8. I ran outside. The jungle was ordinary. Birds. Insects. Morning mist. The path to the pickup zone was visible. I started walking. No voices followed. At noon I reached a clearing. A helicopter came. This time it landed. The crew chief was not the man from my first flight. 2 soldiers jumped out and aimed weapons at me. One shouted, "Identify yourself." I gave my name and unit. They exchanged looks. A medic checked me. "How long were you out there?" "1 week. The medic stared. "You've been missing for 36 hours. "No." He showed me his watch. September 3rd, 1971. I laughed. Then I started crying. According to the Army, my helicopter had never reached Outpost 17. Bad weather forced it to turn back. Somewhere during the return flight, I had apparently fallen or jumped. From the aircraft, a search had begun. There was another problem. The pilot insisted there was no Outpost 17. When I showed officers the location, they found ruins. Old ruins. The bunker had been destroyed the previous year. No functioning radio. No cots. No supplies. No recent footprints except mine. They found one object. A rusted ammunition box. Inside was Lieutenant Hayes's journal. And a photograph. 12 men standing outside Outpost 17 in 1970. Sergeant Miller stood in the back row. I recognized another face. The helicopter crew chief who had tried to collect me at 219. According to the caption, he had died in the attack that destroyed the outpost. The Army doctors said exhaustion, exposure, and combat stress explained. What I remembered. I let them believe it. There was one thing I never told them. In the photograph, there were 13 men. The 13th stood beside Miller. It was me. Part 12, home. I survived the war. I returned to Ohio. For years I avoided radios. I married. I had 2 daughters. I became an electrician. I rarely talked about Vietnam. Miller visited my dreams. Sometimes he stood at the bunker door smoking. Sometimes he was in the tunnel. Sometimes he asked why I had left him. In 1986, my mother died. The night after her funeral, I woke at 1:13. 3 knocks sounded at my front door. I did not answer. A woman's voice said, "Daniel, honey, let me in." My wife slept beside me. I sat awake until sunrise. The knocks didn't return for 11 years. In 1997, my father died. 3 knocks. His voice. I didn't answer. In 2004, my brother Michael died in a car accident. That night, there were no knocks. Instead, an old radio in my garage turned on. "Daniel." Michael's voice. I almost answered. Then another voice came through the static. "Miller. Don't." I unplugged the radio. Kept speaking. "Good," Miller said. Then silence. That was when I realized Outpost 17 had never really released. I should have burned the paper. Instead, curiosity won. I found an old receiver at a flea market. At midnight, I tuned to the frequency. Static. Nothing else. I waited. At 1:13, someone knocked 3 times on the radio speaker. Not the front door. The speaker itself. Knock. 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 Then Blackbird spoke. It sounded like me at 23. Outpost 17, radio check. I couldn't move. Daniel, do you copy? I stayed silent. 50 years is a long time. Static. Thomas is tired. Then Miller screamed. I switched off the radio. Before the speaker died, Blackbird said, Rule 8 doesn't work anymore. Part 14, the last recording. That was 7 years ago. I am an old man now. I have spent those years researching the hill. Official records are incomplete. Names conflict. Coordinates change. Some documents say Outpost 17 existed. Others say it never did. I found Vietnamese accounts describing a place in the same region where travelers heard dead relatives calling after sunset. One account said, the safest response was not to answer because a voice without a body needs yours. That sentence stayed with me. Maybe Blackbird isn't a ghost. Maybe it is something made from people. A collection of final memories, fear and voices, accumulating every time somebody answers. Every person who responds gives it another piece. A name, a memory, a voice, a face. Maybe the rules were never about survival. Maybe they were about refusing to feed it. 3 nights ago, the knocking returned. 1:13. 3 knocks. I ignored them. Then my bedroom window opened. I live on the 2nd floor. A young man climbed inside. 23 years old. Army uniform. Mud on his boots. My face. He looked exactly as I did in 1971. He carried a folded sheet of paper. Daniel, he said. I didn't answer. He placed the paper on the floor. Then he left through the window. I waited until sunrise before touching it. There were 8 rules. The first 7 were the same. The 8th read, if you ever escape Outpost 17, never tell anyone what happened there. Below it was a 9th rule. The handwriting was mine. Rule 9. If you have already told the story, do not let them hear the end. I have been recording this for 47 minutes. The tape recorder says 59. I don't know where the missing 12 minutes went. It is raining outside. My clock reads 1:12 a.m. I can hear a helicopter. There shouldn't be a helicopter. Not here. Not at this hour. The clock changed. 1:13. Someone is at the door. Knock. 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 I'm not going to answer. The radio just turned on. Miller is speaking. He says there was never a Rule 9. Something is walking upstairs. Slowly. 1 step at a time. I locked the bedroom door, but I can see a shadow underneath it. There are boots outside. I can see them through the gap. They're facing away from the door. But whoever is wearing them is knocking from this side. 3 knocks. The door is opening. There's a man standing there. He's wearing my face. He's smiling. And behind him is Sergeant Miller. Miller is shaking his head. The man with my face is holding a radio. Blackbird is speaking through it. It says, Daniel Carter, thank you for telling us your story. Miller is shouting something. I can barely hear him. Wait, he's saying the 8th rule wasn't do not follow the living. He says I remembered it wrong. The real 8th rule was, oh God, no, that's impossible. Because if that's true, then I never escaped. If you're hearing this recording, don't answer anyone who calls your name tonight. And if you wake up at 1:13 and hear 3 knocks, do not look at the door. Because once you see who is standing there, it learns your face.